Welcome back. We continue with the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. Bob Pompeani here until 11 o'clock. We have this week's #1 Cochran Sports Showdown. It will come on after our first night special, after we raise the Future Ball of Pittsburgh tonight at first night at the Highmark stage here. That comes up live after our news at 11 o'clock. And then we'll be on at 12:05 with the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown. Our panel tonight includes Tim Benz, Paul Zeiss, Will Graves. A lot to get into, so join us for that if you want to stay up. And maybe you're tired of watching champagne celebrations. Maybe not. If you are, turn over, and we'll have some good sports opinions coming your way. Meantime, as I said, the Penguins are struggling. So at this point, if you're Jim Rutherford, to me, you got to look at it this way. You have a core that's still a pretty good core. The window of those core players should be open for still 3 years minimum, I would think. I'm talking about Crosby, Malkin, Letang, Kessel, Murray certainly in that core, but you know those key people we talk about. So the decision is you can just ride that core for the next 3 years. Understand this year could be a tough one because of back-to-backs. It's unlikely to win 3 in a row. And, you know, injuries, a lot of games have taken their toll. Potentially there's fatigue. You could make a couple of trades, but if you sacrifice a big name in order to try to win now, it may not work, and it may not guarantee that you get in, or if you do, if you last long. So I think that's the decision they have to look at right now. What is proper moving forward? You got to keep an eye on now, but also in the future as well, because that core still is young enough to get some things done. Let's go out to the lines and see what they got going. Let's go to Jim in Castle Shannon. Hey, Jim, welcome to the Sports Call.
Hey, Bob, how you doing?
All right, Happy New Year to you.
Good, you too, Bob.
Thanks.
Hey, I'd like to ask you a question. Do you think the Penguins should have kept Fleury?
Well, you know, my preference would have been to, but I understood they couldn't just with the economics of it all, just because they had so much up against the cap. It was, you know, Matt Murray has done a wonderful job 2 years in winning cups, and he was the primary goaltender during those stretches. So you had to know he was going to be the franchise goalie, and it's hard to keep a backup at that price tag. That's a difficult decision to make. It's one they made. It's one he accepted, and time moves on. You know, they have Tristan Jarry, who was drafted to be that sort of franchise goalie as well. So
right.
I didn't think they had many other options. It's easy to say keep Fleury, but then if you do that, you're going to have to sacrifice somebody else. So,
well, I think that would have been a better deal to keep Fleury and sacrifice somebody else.
Who would you sacrifice?
Well, maybe Kessel.
All right. Well, if you want to get rid of $7 million that way, go ahead and see what you get. But I mean, that's probably one of the choices they had to make. But Jim, thanks, appreciate it. But you know, the bottom line is Fleury's moved on. He's with a team that's playing very well. In fact, a team who would have thought it'd be this good, 25-9-2, maybe a Western Conference champ potentially. I mean, they're playing that well. There's no reason to think they can't if they continue at the current pace. Let's go out to line 5. That's Brad in Punxsutawney. What's up, Brad? Phil's around the corner, I know.
Oh, for sure. Hey, Happy New Year, first of all.
You
and
too.
I got 2 points to bring up. First point is I know, you know, they say Crosby isn't real comfortable playing with Kessel. I understand that. But they've scored 2 goals in the last 2 games. Offensively, they're getting some shots, but their opportunities aren't point-blank shots. If those 2 guys can play on the power play, then I don't see any reason why they can't play on a line. And they're professionals, and there's too much talent between the 2 of them. And when you can't find the net, you got to do something. As far as transactions and that, I trust Rutherford. He's pushed the right buttons over the last couple of years, and I'm sure they'll do what they do. And my final point is, going back to the last call, I don't know what – Kessel seems to be everybody's scapegoat every time anybody calls in as far as getting rid of him. If he wouldn't be having the season he's having right now, the Penguins would probably be in dead last place. And he's
but you can argue also that his stock is high right now, and if you wanted to get some salary relief and if you could have acquired players who you think can help you in different other areas, I mean – some of those times, those are the best trades you can make. It seems painful at the time, but they can work also. And I think at some point, it may not be this year, but at some point, those core players are going to be sacrificed for trades of other people. It may not be now, but it may be in the next 2 years. So you have to figure out what's best for your team right now.
I'd like to stick with him one more year, only for the fact we've brought him in for 2 years and we've won 2 cups.
Yeah, there's no
I'm
question.
I'm kind of superstitious.
All right.
But, hey, I'm going to hang up, and you have a Happy New Year.
You too. Thanks. Always appreciate that call from Punxsutawney. Let's go out to Ron in Aliquippa, Pennsylvania. Hey, Ron.
Hey, Bob. Happy New Year.
You too. Thanks. What's up?
Well, what I want to know is, why do you think the Steelers, today's win versus Cleveland, do you think their chances for a Super Bowl is messed up?
No, I think, they have as good a shot at anyone. I think the Steelers, thanks for the call, Ron. I think the Steelers genuinely believe they can play anywhere against anybody and win. I think that is what went into their thinking when they rested all their key people today, because they felt, look, even if we don't trust these guys, and if New England should somehow lose to the Jets, which they didn't, but if they did, okay, we're into the number 2 seed no matter what. We'll take that and we'll roll with it. They must feel confident with the way they do it. Otherwise, they would have played their starters just like New England did, figuring there was something to gain when in reality maybe there wasn't. But I think they made their choice. They stuck with it. It turned out to be fine because New England did win. Harrison got 2 sacks, by the way, in this game. But, the bottom line is they rested all their key guys. They need the rest. They got to be healthy. Some people wonder about rust buildup after not playing. I don't see that as a factor. I'd rather have a healthy team going into it, a home game coming up, and it'll be on Sunday the 14th. I think they'll be fine in that direction. Let's go out to Darla in Delmont. Hey, Darla, how are you?
Hi, Bob. Hey, I wanted to ask you a question. On the play when the ball came out of Ridley's hand and the officials called it a fumble, why do you think it took so long for them to see that he was down by contact? I almost thought they were checking with somebody else, like maybe Belichick, to see if they could overturn the call. You know what? That took a ridiculous amount of time, though. What do you think? Why do you think it took so long?
I don't know. It was pretty obvious that that was going to – I don't like that rule, by the way. I don't like a lot of rules in the NFL, Darla. To me, that was a fumble the way I see football. That is a good defensive play. Yes, the ground was there, and to me, the fumble was not caused by the ground. It was a good defensive play, but he was on the ground with one arm down. They should have made that quickly. You're right. I thought tonight the NHL did a very good job as they reviewed the Malkin situation, and that was, you could have argued inconclusive because there was a glove involved with Jimmy Howard. He made a glove save, but the glove went across the line. You could have easily said inconclusive. We don't know for sure where that puck is in the glove. They decided, no, that's a goal. It's in there. We're making it, boom, done, quick. That's what it has to be. But, the NFL has issues with the replay system. I think I've been pretty loud and clear about that. Let's go to Kim and Carrick. Hey, Kim, how are you?
I'm good.
Don't listen to the TV, Kim. Just go ahead and talk.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I didn't
all right.
know. Okay, hold on. Here.
Now what are you?
Well, why didn't they put Harrison? Oh, what about Harrison?
Well, I mean, they didn't figure he was going to be in there. Here's what I think happened. I think, he asked for his release a couple of times when he knew he was going to play. That bothered him. Okay, fine. You signed a contract. That's part of being a professional. You got to know sometimes you don't get your way. And then he started to do some of the stuff that some players accused him of doing, and that became a problem for Mike Tomlin and his coaching staff. And it finally got to the point, even though I think they would have preferred keeping him here as a depth insurance policy in the playoffs, they decided that was too much for them to handle because he was doing whatever he was accused of doing. So I don't know. He goes there. He's motivated. One thing you know about James Harrison, when he's motivated, he's a tough guy. And I think it's interesting that he got 2 sacks, took advantage of a left tackle today who was not as quick as him. And he also, if you want to look ahead, if it comes down to New England and Pittsburgh, it's going to be Villanueva versus Harrison. They know each other well. Harrison has a low center of gravity. He's 6 foot tall. Villanueva's 6'8" and has had problems, taking on guys like that. Very interesting matchup to watch if it gets to be that point. We will see. John, Jim, Tony, and Chris all coming up next when I come back. It is the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call right here live on Pittsburgh's CW.